Ladies, mute. Sela, mute yourself.
Oh,
Good afternoon. Good afternoon. Good afternoon. Could be good afternoon or good morning, wherever you're joining us from. This is Miss Kim, joining you as usual. You are Sunday afternoon Happiness Tribe host and coming live from my beautiful, warm but getting cold city, Gaborone in Botswana. That is right in Southern Africa. Welcome, welcome. Join us, the Happiness Tribe. Could you be logging in from YouTube or LinkedIn or Facebook? Please say hello and tell us where you're joining us from. I'm joined today by one co-host and a guest. And I'm just going to pass the mic to my co-host so she can introduce the guest. We have a very, very beautiful topic today. Please make sure you join and listen keenly because our guest is going to drop gems, things that you'd love to know. We're getting into, can we get a better world? Have we played a role in this? Can we make it better? Do we have a role to, we have something that we can contribute positively? Are we able to plant a tree that we may never sit on its shade? It's such a beautiful feeling. So before I get into the meat of the matter, let me pass the mic for my co-host to introduce our guest. Then I'll share details on what this podcast is all about. Thank you. Miss Judith, the mic is yours.
thank you, Miss Kim. And hello, everyone. My name is Judith Mulusi, and I'm very happy to be joining you this afternoon in Gaborone. We don't pronounce the G, Gaborone, for those of you who may not know. And it's an exciting afternoon. I'm looking forward to the conversation that we will be having with our guest, Miss Sela Motswane, who's made time for us this afternoon. But before we get there, Miss Kim, I'd like to ask that you introduce the Happiness Tribe. I'd like you to think about where it started. It doesn't have to be a long introduction, but just to give our listeners, those who are new to the tribe, an idea of who we are and where we come from, how far we've come, and the motivation, the purpose behind our existence. Thank you, Ms. Kim.
Yes, a very good point. This is a conversation I like having on why the tribe. Why the Happiness Tribe? What's in a name? And what do we do? What do we stand for? So the Happiness Tribe was born it's not months now because we're clocking 2 years. And this was born out of when there's a time that audio rooms from LinkedIn became quite a thing. And we were constantly in those audio rooms. And I could frequently visit the audio room and I'll get people talk about their depression, their suicide stories. And this was touching me deep. So it led to that thing of, I'll just go like, how sad is the world? How do we get here? What can I do about it? I'm not an expert in that space. So I could feel helpless when I encounter people talk about their suicidal thoughts and how heavy life is, which I think we have not recovered from COVID. We can all agree COVID is something that tried our patience, our finances, our everything. We were all affected in different ways. We lost our loved ones, we lost our jobs, we lost our livelihoods. It was quite something. And I don't think we have stopped to look at what's the journey for us to heal and thrive and be who we are supposed to be. So I got to ask one of our directors now, Miss Paula, and I asked her, this thing is disturbing me. I don't want to leave the audio rooms. I don't like the feeling of just feeling helpless, like there's nothing I can do about it. And I feel this is beyond me. And she came up with a suggestion. Why don't you start a podcast and call it the Happiness Tribe? Because you love podcasting. And there, the very same day, the Happiness Tribe was born. So the Happiness Tribe has been streaming every Sunday since then. So we are a community sort of a movement that centers around personal growth, collective well-being, and meaningful impact. We've created what we have in Southern Africa, the spirit of Ubuntu. So we've designed this to bring together individuals who are committed to living fulfilling lives, supporting one another, and creating positive change within our communities. So we have 6 directors, very active members. Ms. Yodit is one of them. We have Dr. Gladys, we have Ms. Grace, we have Mr. Selassie, and we have Ms. Paula. Experts in specific fields and all from different walks of life. We actually, within the continent, within the continent, we have originally from Kenya, living in Botswana. Then we have Miss Yodis living in Botswana, originally from Ethiopia. Then we have Selassie from Ghana. We have Miss Grace in the US, originally from Eritrea. And then we have Dr. Gladys from US. And we have Miss Paula from, gosh, what's Miss Paula's country's name? In South America.
Belize.
From Belize. Oh, I hope she's not online because I'm going to get her beating. So we have Miss Paula from Belize, very, very active. We are all experts from our specific fields, and we've created this community where we support each other. We come up with these topics that mean to heal us, to heal ourselves, to heal others. We're all very entrepreneurial. So the platform is meant to empower people. It's a space for learning and unlearning, and of course, co-creating solutions for living together, for living a better life, and of course, leading change, and with the kind of topics that we constantly have. So it's a network of change makers, and currently, we've launched a book. We're also we're about actually to work on an official launch for a book. We're working on a retreat to Zanzibar. And we have various courses that we bring and train people. And we also recruit members to join the Happiness Tribe. So tune in, join us, follow our pages. You'll learn much more about the Happiness Tribe and what we do and what we stand for. I hope that answers Ms. Yodit.
Thank you, Ms. Kim. That was a wonderful introduction to the Happiness Tribe. And now Sela knows a little bit more of what I do in on days that I'm not engaging with her and other things that have to do with development and sustainability. So let me dive right in to introduce our guest. But I'm going to introduce her from the story of how we met. Please excuse my voice. I met Sela many years ago and was immediately intrigued by her vision. Here was a young woman who knew exactly what it is that she wants to do. And that was to plant trees, to make sure that she leaves this world better than she found it, because she recognized that we had a huge problem when it comes to deforestation, land degradation, climate change, etc. All those things that I'm certain everybody listening is already aware of and has been impacted by. So intrigued by Sela's vision, excited by the fact that she wasn't scared to verbalize it. And the amount of energy that she puts into not only identifying partners that can help her fulfill this vision, but also getting down on her hands and knees to actually plant the trees whilst she's educating the folks that she's brought together on why it's important, how we take care of trees, etc., etc. So I was sold. I must confess that she also mentioned the fact that she was inspired by the campaign in Ethiopia, where there was a huge drive to plant millions of trees, and that has been achieved. And I believe there have been similar campaigns in other countries across our continent. So that's how I met Miss Sela. And the reason today that we decided, because we've been having different kinds of podcasts on different topics, is in this month, on the 22nd, the world will be commemorating Earth Day. Earth Day was first established, I believe it's turning 55 years. And it's an opportunity for us to come together as people who are concerned about Earth, our children, and what we're leaving for them, to think about and to be very active in mobilizing others to think about and consider how we're impacting our Mother Earth. I believe the UN adopted the same, I can't remember now if it was 2008 or 2009, and the UN calls it International Mother Earth Day. So this will take place on the 22nd of April, which is, I believe, next week. And the theme for this year is Our Power, Our Planet. As much as the theme relates to renewable energy, we wanted to start with this conversation with Sela, because she brings in a powerful movement and one that has an opportunity to grow with the active participation of people not only in Botswana but in other countries. So let me stop here and ask Sela to kindly introduce herself to us. Sela, please tell us who you are and what your background is and why you are here today. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Judith, and thank you so much for that introduction. And thank you very much, Ms. Kim, for also explaining the Happiness Tribe. I'm new to the Happiness Tribe, and it seems like a wonderful movement. So my full name is Sela Motwane. I was born in Gaborone, Botswana, and I've lived on a farm most of my childhood and into my teenage years. So I'm very much in touch with, I understand biodiversity, even though at the time I didn't know the word biodiversity. I'm very much in touch with conservation, even though at the time I wasn't aware of these kinds of words. So fast forward to my university days. I was living in London, and I was sitting in London and thinking, I'm going to be coming home. It was October 2019. And what am I coming here for? Because every time I come here, there's nothing comes of it. I just come home and then I go back to the UK. So while I was in London, I read an article about Ethiopia. So there've been movements like 1 million tree campaign all over Europe, but I'd never actually seen anything in Africa. So when I read that Ethiopia had planted millions of trees, I thought, if Ethiopia can do this, then why can't Botswana do this? Because there's only 2.6 million of us, and I just didn't see why this was possible. So even before I arrived home, which was around the 7th of October in 2019, I'd already planned that I'm going to launch a 1 million tree campaign in Botswana. So this is really how I started. And I started contacting, and then COVID hit. But by that time, I'd already been to a lot of embassies. I'd been to the Kenya embassy, I'd been contacted the Chinese embassy, the EU delegation, the Namibia embassy. So I'd contacted the Russia embassy, the US embassy. So when COVID hit, what happened was that all the embassies had actually shut. So the diplomat and the British High Commission as well. So the diplomats that I've been talking to actually gave me their mobile numbers, and I was able to have a much more personal relationship with them, where I was texting them and just telling them what I was trying to achieve in the country of planting 1 million trees, and could they please fund. It was a very difficult journey. I also contacted corporations. It was a very difficult journey because a lot of the ambassadors didn't really want to fund, but the diplomats actually wanted to fund. So, for example, with the British High Commission, I remember the ambassador actually said no to the campaign, but then the political officer actually gave me 4,000 bula out of that petty cash. And they said, here you go, you can start off Sela. And actually one of the embassies that helped the most in the beginning was the Kenya High Commission, because of course they know Wangari. We all know Wangari Maathai, Professor Wangari Maathai. And so they actually funded the planting of trees in Mokolodi village where I actually live right now. So every household in Mokolodi actually got one fruit tree and one shade tree each, which meant that our first project, thanks to the Kenya High Commission. And then in 2021, again, the Kenya High Commission funded this. So we went to Nyangago Hospital in Francistown, which is the northeast of Botswana, and we planted. The movement started, and then other embassies also followed later on, and other corporates as well. But it was really the embassies and the staff. I wouldn't say the embassies, because like I said, the high commissioners and the ambassadors were not really keen on it, but it was the actual staff that actually joined in this whole movement. So they actually understood exactly what I was talking about. And when I mentioned that, I'd seen Ethiopia did it, the African embassy was like, well, that's it. We're going to completely support you. So this is how I started that campaign.
Thank you, Ms. Sela. Who is Sela? So you told us about your background in terms of this specific campaign, but maybe you could share with us as well what you studied and why this is so important to you.
Okay, so the first course I studied, I was sponsored by the Botswana government, and I studied horticulture. This was in Cape Town. And while we were in Cape Town, we had 12 months of an internship program that we had to go on as part of our course. So I actually asked the Ministry of Education if I could go and do my training in the UK. And, quite surprisingly, they said, yeah, and they gave us, my flatmate and I, they gave us 5,000 pula, and we were able to buy an air ticket and go and do training. I was in Cambridge, where I actually ended up living for 13 years. So this is really how my journey began. I've always been a plant person, like I said, because I grew up on a farm. I understand the importance of biodiversity, I understand soils, even though at the time I didn't really have all the vocabulary, understanding the difference between weather and climate. I understand pollution, and well, my time in Cape Town, I also understood that there were technologies that were emerging that we didn't have here in Botswana. So I didn't want to do my training here in Gaborone. I wanted to do it abroad so that I learn a few things. So while I was in the UK, I volunteered for the Chelsea Flower Show. And this was under Kirsten Bosch Botanical Garden, which is based in Cape Town. And I volunteered for about 3 years. Kirsten Bosch won gold at the Chelsea Flower Show for 3 years in a row. And that's really where I learned the importance of plants for the aesthetic value, and also plants for climate change. So that's really my background in terms of where I'm coming from the plants aspect of things.
Great, thanks, Sela. So let's talk about the Green Botswana Trust. You established this trust, and you've been running with it for a number of years. It's established as a trust, but runs almost like a social enterprise because of what the mandate of the trust is. Maybe share with us some of the programs that you've been involved with, and what you've been able to achieve with the trust to date.
So the reason I registered Green Botswana as a trust, because I was anticipating a couple of problems which we've actually had. We have neighbors around Mokolodi. So there's a village that plots in their farm. So I know that if you make changes to your property, that neighbors tend to object. So I registered the trust at the Botswana High Court, so that if there were any changes made, that way they would have to take on the trust, which is based at the High Court, rather than attack me personally. So for example, we have a biogas plant, which is a way of showing that you could actually live a sustainable life. So on the farm, we have free gas. We also have a rain-fed dam, and then we have also about 200 trees on the actual property. So the trust was started by first planting at schools. So I think there are about, if I'm not mistaken, there are about over 1,000 schools in Botswana. So I thought schools and health centers have fencing, they have security, and they have staff. So if I was to start planting trees, they'd have to have security, and then they need people to look after them. So these trees, we started planting at different primary schools, junior schools, and senior schools, and also clinics. So in the last 6 years, I think we've done about 41 clinics. So if you go into a public clinic now in Greater Gaborone, you will find 10 to 20 fruit trees within it. And then at schools, which are most of them were government schools, we planted 50 fruit trees to 100 fruit trees each. And then like I said, we then moved on to the bigger hospitals, like JP Govindama Hospital, which is northwest of Botswana in Shakawe, where we planted 100 trees. And then in northeast of Botswana, Francistown, where we planted 75 trees. So that was really the whole idea of that. We need people to look after the trees, otherwise they just wouldn't survive. So that was our strategy when we first started out.
Thanks, Ms. Sela. And what are some of the challenges that you've encountered in terms of, mainly you mentioned that people have to take care of the trees. So I assume that's one of the things that you encountered, and it would be great if you could share with us what is it that you're doing to encourage people to take care of the trees. But I also want to get to the way in which you mobilize communities, because I know that one of the things that you have done is literally walk door to door in different places to encourage people to plant trees. So if you could speak to us first about, some of the methods that you've applied. Community mobilizing is a very powerful tool. So if you could just explain a little bit about what you did there and how you got support for that. But then also now talking about the trees that were planted, how do you ensure that they are in fact taken care of by the folks who you've entrusted with the trees? Ms. Sela, did you hear me?
Well, I'm sorry. Okay, so I'll start with the community mobilization. When we first started the project, we actually went around asking every householder if they were interested in the project, where the whole village would have fruit trees and shade trees. So we asked about 336 households. A lot of people said yes. Some people said that they can't because they were renters, or they didn't have fencing, or they didn't have water. So that's how we got community mobilization. But also community mobilization, we ask people to plant. So there's only 5 of us as trustees in Green Botswana, so we cannot plant hundreds of trees ourselves. We need people to plant the trees themselves. So that's really how we've mobilized, is to ask them, are you interested in this project? If they say yes, then would you help us to plant the trees? And so far, there's been a really great reception with everything. And then you were asking about the challenges. The challenges of the tree planting is that, number one, not everybody understood the names of the trees, or that there were so many different types of fruit trees, so there are so many different types of shade trees. We've had challenges with extremely in one of the years, because it was just so hot, and again because people didn't have, I think, the proper knowledge, then there was a high mortality of trees. Another challenge I would have to say is lack. I wouldn't say lack knowledgeable. They're actually surprisingly knowledgeable, but there's a disconnect actual action. So at some of the government schools, we've suffered a high mortality because the trees just simply were not watered, which was surprising because they have such a huge labor force. We
Hi, Sela, did you mute yourself?
Maybe it's her internet, because I can see she's not on mute.
Okay. I also heard what I think is a cat. So I thought maybe maybe she's trying to take care of the cat. Uh-oh. Okay, we've lost Sela. Hopefully she'll be able to rejoin. But I think just based on, some of the things that she's been telling us is the power of mobilizing individuals to support you in a huge campaign. What's impressive is there are five people involved in the Green Botswana Trust currently. And I will ask Sela to speak about some of the other partners, especially government partners who've come on board to support Stella's mandate. Okay, she's back. Everything okay, Sela? I could hear, I don't know if it's a cat or
No,
something.
I'm so sorry. I didn't realize.
It's okay.
Yes, let me get, but I wasn't.
Okay, we can hear you now, so maybe you can pick up where you dropped off.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes, I'm not sure when I got cut off.
You were telling us about some of the challenges that you're.
Hello.
Hi. There's background noise. Sela, are you still there?
Hello.
Sela, are you still there? I could hear you, but I've now lost you. Okay, let's give Sela a couple of minutes to reconnect. In the meantime, I see Cyrus is online, Lisa's online, and Ms. Paula's online. Thank you everyone for joining us and for sending us greetings on the chat. Ms. Paula has commented to say community mobilization is the key to secure buy-in for social benefit programs. Wonderful strategy for this green program. Yes, right knowledge is so important, and so is oversight throughout the process. Thank you, Ms. Paula, for your comment. It has been a very important, if not critical, strategy that Green Botswana Trust is utilizing, in addition to building partnerships with key stakeholders. And the beauty of this program in Botswana, and what I've learned, is that government is very willing to assist. And in fact, there are, in every village, there are forest extension workers. I believe that's what they're called. But these are experts in their own right on tree planting. So they will come in when there's a tree planting exercise happening and provide support to the community that's involved in the tree planting. So this kind of assistance makes it a little bit easier to drive afforestation programs. Sela, I see that you're back.
Yes, I am. I don't know why it keeps kicking me out.
Okay. Well, hopefully you're back to stay for a while. Let me. You were commenting about some of the challenges with the tree planting. I believe you were on lack of knowledge about the trees. Maybe you can just start off from there.
Okay, yes, I was explaining that some of the challenges that we're having, because we grow 15 different types of fruit trees, and not everybody's aware of how to grow the fruit trees. Some people aren't even aware that some of those fruit trees can actually grow in the country. So those are some of the challenges that we've had. But I've found that the best way to teach somebody is for them to do it. Like if I was to tell you about bananas, for example, that we have two varieties, which is Sweet William and Banana Cavendish. It's not really clear unless you're actually looking at them and seeing the difference and actually planting them and seeing them grow. And I think that's really the best way that we've managed to get around that challenge. And then you're saying, what are we doing to encourage people? We do a lot of talking. We contact a lot of schools, we contact a lot of health centers and a lot of corporates just to try to mobilize the society. It's been a great challenge because, like I said, launching a 1 million tree campaign, people are slow on the uptake, but I think that it'll gain mobility later on.
Thanks. Sorry. Thanks, Sela. I think your strategy of approaching schools is a fantastic one, because a lot of times it is our children, or it's our children who teach us adults who may be too busy to think about these things, but also because once they latch onto something, they're so committed. And I think one of the things about your tree planting campaign has done for the schools, it has, for those schools that have engaged, it's an affirmation to me that the school is indeed interested. And I know they've got environmental education programs at these schools, but like you said, doing it for yourself is so different from just reading about it. And so one of the reasons why I believe this campaign is here to stay and that it will in fact fulfill its mandate is because you're engaging those very people, the little ones, who will pester their parents and pester their teachers to ensure that we get involved and we're active. And at this point, I'd like to just switch to Ms. Kim for a minute, because there have been a couple of opportunities that Ms. Kim has opened up to environmentalists through her work, where she's always with children. And for Ms. Kim to share with us what she's done with children in those opportunities, and perhaps also now to go to her passion, which is technology and AI, and allow us to visualize what AI could possibly do or technology could possibly do to enhance this campaign. Ms. Kim?
Yes, Ms. Judith, and thank you very much. This is quite exciting. Of course, as somebody who has been a beneficiary of your work, Ms. Judith, and Ms. Sela's work. And I love this whole thing, the community mobilization, which Ms. Paula suggested here, which I think, Ms. Paula, you need to come on stage and tell us more. Because I resonate with this so much, because this is a seed, a habit, a culture that was planted in me as a child. And maybe that's why I think, without trying to oversell myself as a Kenyan, it's just in us. And once, this is what you train when you teach kids when they're still young. It doesn't matter where they go with that. You've planted a habit, a seed that kids. I've had battles with authorities over cutting my trees within my own yard. Everywhere I've lived since I left my mom's house, I've planted a tree. And it's something I go through life with a lot of pride. I'll even accidentally pass by somewhere I used to live, be it was my office or it was my home, but I planted trees. And I appreciate so much Sela's mention of education, because I've struggled to understand indigenous trees in Botswana, where I've planted trees that then later on I'll be told, do you know the story of this tree? Do you know this tree will make the foundation of your house crack or this and that? And I remember at some point I had to go to the forest, the government tree nursery place with some branches from my tree, because somebody was reconstructing some little house extension. And this builder was saying, this tree is what is messing up your foundation and it has to go. And I was adamant. So I took some branches and I went and I had some world-class masterclass on getting to understand indigenous tree, which Botswana has very, very healthy indigenous trees that attract rain and that, well, I haven't come across, let me not speak for Sela, she knows this best, but I haven't come across trees that really mess up with the environment. As a tree planter, somebody is very passionate about the environment. We've had cases where the government would tell us to cut some trees. That was in Kenya. something will be poisonous about a particular tree. So this has to be collective. It's not something that can be done in isolation or one person. And that's where we have to team up. There's no way Sela is going to plant 1 million trees on her own. I love the project with the schools that she's doing. We invite Sela quite often when we have projects that you're doing with children. And the previous one, first they came, Sela and Miss Judith, and planted 50 trees at our center, which I can't even begin to explain how that felt. Now, those trees, especially the pawpaws, the fruit trees, certainly in the next 1 year, they'll start giving us fruits. And then, of course, they have changed the atmosphere. Our office environment feels different. There's just something from your personal well-being to the air we breathe. There's something that's so deep, the connection we have with Mother Earth, Mother Nature, that makes that place feel and look different. I would love, Sela, later, if you get an opportunity, to tell us a little bit about the potted plants, because that's something else I actually didn't know. I hear it's a very strong thing that people are doing in different parts of the world, but I didn't know that you can plant a fruit tree in a sack. I'm sure you have a word for it, like in a bag, because that's how our trees came, and they're still growing beautifully in those potted sort of bags and stuff like that. So there's no reason for us not to do this. It doesn't matter where you live. You live in a flat, as long as you have a little space. I've planted. This has really motivated me now to even increase more trees and more flowers, because the place just looks beautiful. You look forward to going there. It's homey. It's a center, and and more important, every time we have children coming to our center, we take them on a journey to understand these fruit trees and to understand, why do we need to take care of our environment? Why does this matter? Okay, let me go to Miss Judith's question. And obviously, this is something I'm very passionate about. I like it you mentioned that. Technology and how we can use technology, especially currently. What can we do with AI? And this is something at Destination Imagination as well we do. We do a lot of hackathons, which is a climate action hackathon, to train and educate the children, to give them a platform for them to learn. So when we talk about now planting trees and sustainability efforts, tree mapping and tree tracking, there's a lot that's going on in the space of AI with that. So where maps, we are able to plant trees. I've seen this happen in Kenya, and with the GPS coordinates, you can first plant these trees with drones. There's a lot of drone planting that's happening. And you can put GPS coordinates and you're able to track this tree. You can also label and collect data. The date the tree was planted, who planted it, the growth status. And this is information that we need. So the periodic tracking, the photo uploads, AI can detect changes in height, the health of the leaf, and overall progress. It actually, I felt like, wow, sometimes we can be so ignorant about our environment. When Sela went like the tree mortality rate within schools, I then went like, yeah, Botswana is very hot. How are these kids managing? Because I've not lost any of my trees, but then I water them every day. So there's a job to be done. And I actually have a dedicated person that even when we are closed, like now we're coming to Easter, I have to make a commitment to go and water them, otherwise they're gonna die. When it's festive season, Christmas, we're away for a week or so, I have to make sure there's somebody responsible for ensuring that these trees are planted. So yes, there's that, and now using AI, we can be able to water our plants, and we can also be able to track on how they're doing. So that's the periodic watering, fertilizer, the forecasting. You can also try to avoid overwatering and reduce waste with smart climate action and sustainability measures that you can use AI to support that. Then, of course, looking at the young generation, they get excited about it more when you integrate with technology. So if you allow them to get into identification of tree species, the diseases, they upload the leaves, and they're doing all this using tech online, they can also learn how to solve the environmental problems, tracking deforestation, and they can help us restore our forest. I think those are a few items I can mention on how, with the use of AI, but I think for me, the one that speaks volumes, of course, now we're able to track We had floods recently in Botswana, and we used AI, we used drones. We are able to sort of now get a better prediction on when are the next floods coming and what are we supposed to do about it. And just ensuring that we train our youth who are excited about technology. That makes a big difference. Thank you, Ms. Judith.
Thank you, Ms. Kim. That's it is very exciting, and I know that Sela has had an experience around what drones can do to help us manage the trees that we have planted. But you also said a couple of things that are very important, Ms. Kim, in terms of getting kids excited about reforestation programs, etc., is to blend it with STEM or STEAM education, and to get them, plant those seeds early. You also talked about the fruit trees in pots. So I want to go back to Ms. Sela now and ask her. There are two questions based on what Ms. Kim has just shared with us. The first one is planting fruit trees in pots. I think it's the most amazing thing. And I remember when Sela first mentioned it, I wasn't quite sure, but then went and did a little bit of research and saw pictures of, these little fruit trees with so many fruits. I think the one that I saw was what we call nachis in Botswana. I think you call them tangerines in the West. So I'd like for you, Sela, to talk a little bit about that, because it does provide an opportunity for everyone to have a little fruit tree if you have any outside space. I don't know if it's possible inside. So please talk to us about that, Sela. And then the second one, where I'm also very curious, is about the indigenous trees that are available in Botswana. I know that the government of Botswana on an annual basis has a campaign around planting of a specific indigenous tree. And maybe go into the details of why it's better to plant trees that are used to the environment, as opposed to bringing in trees that may be fast growing, but can eventually destroy the environment. Ms. Sela?
Thank you very much. I'll start with potted plants. So in urban cities, as you know, like Cape Town, or parts of the Netherlands, or even the UK, people don't have the space that we have in Botswana. I think sometimes we take it for granted just how much space that we have. So the concept of a potted plant is not foreign in countries where they don't have space. So basically, if you plant, let's say, an orange tree in a pot, what you're going to get is actually the dwarf version of the tree, which would have been outside. That's simply what it is. Anything, almost anything, can actually grow in a pot, and if it's a fruit tree, it will absolutely fruit. So I was advocating for potted fruit trees, because first of all, at the time we're suffering extreme heat. So I thought, if you have a potted fruit tree, then you can manage it better. And then also the beauty of that is that if you are showing anybody, like let's say a granadilla or pawpaw or mango, whatever, you wouldn't have to go outside to like a large area. You can show them something that is quite close to where they are. So that was the beauty of having fruit trees. And then you also spoke about indigenous trees. So Botswana's national trees is the marula. That tree actually grows quite fast, and I think it grows up to about 10 meters. So it's quite a big tree, and it's good for microclimates because it creates a huge shade. But so Botswana has acacias. It has different types of indigenous fruit trees, and the reason that people don't really like them is because they take so long to grow, and some of them are also thorny. So this is why not a lot of people like them. But the nice thing about indigenous trees is that they actually suck up a lot of carbon, and they're very low maintenance. So once you've planted an indigenous tree, it doesn't need a lot of water to grow. So this is why the Botswana government is a huge advocate for indigenous trees. So thank you, Yodit.
Thank you, Ms. Sela. Just to talk about the marula tree, if you come to Gaborone, and Sela, you'll tell me when the season is, because I know that there's a particular time during the year where almost everywhere you go in the city, especially in, I guess what others would refer to downtown, where we have the government buildings, etc., or the old government enclave, you'll have, in some of the schools, the murula tree drops its fruit and it's all over. You'll see kids picking it up and eating it. It's quite a sweet fruit. And there are some people who've actually started businesses that use the murula fruit to make murula jams, to make juices. There are a few who've tried alcohol. So it's actually quite an interesting tree, but it becomes, for some folks who have to clean up every single day, it becomes a bit of a nightmare. But it really is something that I know has been studied and I believe has made some people quite successful in starting enterprises. I want to turn to the chat for a minute. Welcome to the show, Zomzi. Thank you for saying hi. There are a few comments as well. Ms. Paula says, in Belize, in Central America, there was a small tree planting program. However, the trees were not native to the region and were invasive to the local environment. Local involvement was not initiated until the leaders were ready to invite local stakeholders to help with the planting. Thank you, Ms. Paula. Yes, it seems like this is a problem that we've had, or a challenge that we've had in many different countries. I know eucalyptus is one tree that was brought to the continent, to a few countries in the continent, because it's a fast-growing tree, and of course, it's got its medicinal powers as well. I remember as a child, when you have a cold, a big pot of eucalyptus leaves is boiled, and you inhale that, and it helps. I believe we still use it, but it was. I guess you'd label it an invasive tree. I don't know, Ms. Sela, please correct me if I'm wrong, but I know that other plants don't grow where the eucalyptus tree is. And so it becomes difficult to promote biodiversity where you have eucalyptus trees. Thank you, Ms. Paula. Then there's a question. I believe this one is directed at Ms. Kim. How does this tree planting program fit into an overall local STEAM education program? Ms. Kim, do you want to take that question?
Yes, I love the question. And trust that to be Miss Paula. So, okay, have we lost? Let me just put her back on top. Now, on the tree planting, so there's a lot of education that takes place and starts with climate action skills that we teach children. And like our recent hackathon, which we actually created this hackathon after the floods. We had floods like 2 months ago. We specifically dealt with how can we get youth within our communities mitigate climate action. So they build and come up with a solution. And one of those solutions is obviously taking care of soil erosion, planting more trees, and getting to understand our vegetation and different places, different trees we can plant, different covers we can put. So think about it. The project, when you get the kids to lead and come up with solutions, we don't even tell them solutions. We just give them a structure for a particular project. So we tell them, look, we're facing floods. You've seen schools were closed. I think for 3 days, kids didn't go to school. So this is within our environment. And we lost a few people. Some people died. Some people were displaced. How can we come up with solutions to this problem? So kids from different schools, depending on their age group, came up with different solutions. And we actually styled it as a mini competition, where they're competing and looking at who comes with the most impactful solution using artificial intelligence. That was beautiful. So obviously some built apps. How can we use an app? It's a prototype, it's a little thing, but then you can see and appreciate the idea behind it. So when you get kids to lead, you put them at the center of the education experience, they own the journey. They get so focused, they get so committed, and they even want to see that coming to fruition. So some of the children from some schools that went like, yeah, we also need to start a club, an environmental club. We need to start with, let's take some space within the school community. We start harvesting this water from the floods, and then we can use that water and we start our vegetation. We can start planting trees, whatever the case could be. But we need to start doing, and we need to start something. I think it's something that we shouldn't just start crying or waking up just because we have floods, we have something that is urging us to do it. But this is a movement that children need to start and carry on with it. So when you get school ambassadors who are leading on climate action, they make sure it becomes a movement that even as they proceed to other grades or other schools, when other kids come and see what somebody started, they also want to carry on and get it going. Those are some of the things we've done as Destination Imagination to ensure that kids are part of the climate action situation, and much more important, sustainability and safeguarding our environment. I hope that answers.
That's wonderful, Ms. Kim. And as you were speaking about the work that you've done and the excitement that you're creating, it means that we need to start looking for those partners that will enable these programs. In other words, how do we continue to support these children in the school environment with their environmental clubs to continue the work that they're doing, to make sure that they have everything that they need to keep those trees alive, but also to continue to learn about what other countries are doing to sustain these programs. Because like you said earlier, you plant the seed when they're very young and they continue with that. You develop them to become activists from a young age, and they will continue with that. So it's something that for me is very exciting. It's an opportunity for partners who are keen and very interested in ensuring that we leave Earth better than we found it for our children to get involved. And also, how do we nurture the relationship that you've developed with Green Botswana Trust so that you are consistently and continuously promoting these programs with the schools? And then, how do we reach those kids who are in what is called the remote areas? I know that Sela has been up to in the northern parts of Botswana, Maun, Shakawe, some of these smaller villages, and planted trees there at clinics and hospitals. But these partnerships become critical if we want to sustain these programs. And then bringing in children, Ms. Kim, the program that you're running with DI, it becomes, at the end of it, a beautiful story that shows how people come together to create change that is not only impactful, but that's also sustainable. Okay, I'm going to go back to the questions and comments just for a couple more minutes to make sure that we have addressed all of them. Thank you, Ms. Paula, for that question. Hello, Dr. Gladys. It's also nice to have you with us. I wish you could join the stage so we could hear your voices. I don't know if Ms. Kim can enable that. Ms. Paula and Dr. Gladys are directors in the Happiness Tribe. So Dr. Gladys is saying, due to climate change, we are having issues with trees in many parts of the US. I believe it's the same here. And Ms. Paula is asking, is there any solution provided to mitigate this climate change impact on local trees? And the response from Dr. Gladys is, unfortunately, the only solution thus far is to remove the trees. They have become a danger. I know that a few weeks ago, and Ms. Kim mentioned the floods and the very heavy rains that we've been having in Botswana. Thousands of people have been displaced from their homes, and it was really quite tragic to see so much water. But it also has a devastating impact. And one of the things that happened, unfortunately, is almost every weekend you could hear folks cutting trees down because it had become dangerous. It was a problem. I don't know, Ms. Sela, would you like to comment on that? What are some of the things that we should think about doing? Ms. Kim already mentioned how she was warned not to plant certain trees because the roots can get under the walls and under the foundation of the house. But in this current environment where we have floods and torrential rains in parts of the country, and we're just not used to that, but what are some of the things that we can think of doing as individuals at home, and then maybe also as communities who are impacted?
Thank you, Yodit. I'm not aware of the particular case in the US, but I'm very surprised to hear people saying that trees are a danger, because it's well known that trees stabilize soil. So actually having trees there prevents flooding. It creates groundwater, and and most importantly, it absorbs carbon dioxide and releases oxygen. So I'm quite surprised to hear people saying that trees are actually a danger when actually they could save the situation, especially if you have things like flooding. So I'm not sure which cases they're specifically talking about, if they were here in Botswana where people were cutting down the trees, or if this was in the US. Could you just clarify where
Yes.
exactly?
Well, I think if maybe Dr. Gladys can further explain, but I can certainly explain what was happening right here. Unfortunately, in our garden here, is we had a very big tree, and it was very sad, falling onto the wall and taking it down. And then what was left, so we cut part of it and left the other part. And then the following weekend, literally, was a week later, the remaining tree fell in the other direction, making it almost impossible to get into the yard. So the danger is exactly that, Sela, where we have trees close to our homes, close to electric lines. We eventually had to come to call somebody to help us cut branches, not the entire tree, and thank God it's growing back, but we had to cut a lot of the branches because it was too close to the electrical lines. So I think in an urban environment where you have trees that grow very big, and then we have people coming in to settle, and the electric lines are there, at some point you're forced to remove those trees. So that's what I was getting at. Is we've got these beautiful trees, and it's unfortunate that you have to take them down, because God forbid they fall onto the house and cause damage that then also hurts children or people in the house. So I think that is the danger that big trees pose. And I don't know, Dr. Gladys, if you wanted to say, but I think just from the videos that I've seen of some of the hurricanes, for instance, and those things you can't help. I mean, hurricanes are another animal altogether, and I know the Caribbean especially suffers from that. Again, climate change is one of the big, if not the big reason why this is happening. So that's the danger that I believe Dr. Gladys is trying to highlight.
Can I add on that a little bit?
Please, Ms. Kim, thank you.
So maybe Sela, you can speak to it, and maybe just back to clarifying on Dr. Gladys. I've been a victim of that, where Botswana Power insisted on cutting my morula tree, which was actually right outside my house. So it's within my yard, but it's not right within my compound. Does that make sense? Yes. Like just outside your fence. So I refused. Of course, we started by just being diplomatic. Then it ended up becoming like a court order that I like. It's now getting ugly, because I'm coming from an environment where I think actually at some point in Kenya, I don't know if it's still happening, but it's illegal to cut down a tree. And we still have some indigenous trees that you're not allowed to cut. We even have some beliefs associated with some of our trees. You can't cut a fig tree, which I think is what we call mugumo tree. And if that fig tree falls for any reason, it's supposed to be, it's claimed to be, this fellow should join me on this. It's claimed to be a bad omen. We actually associate it with a leader will die, something horrible will happen if a fig tree falls. So we're very, very strong and adamant that I grew up knowing cutting a tree is a crime. However, many, many years ago, wow, I love how old I am, because honestly, it's like 40 years ago. And I remember it, I must have been very young, when the government issued a directive of a particular tree that had to be cut down. Because I remember people from the forestry department going from home to home, farm to farm. That tree had red leaves, and if you cut it, it's whitish like milk. That milk, if it gets on your skin, you get sick. You get so sick. So there was an allergy reaction that was associated with that tree, and those trees had to be uprooted. So I think once in a while, these trees either get diseases or something happens, then you find there's a particular tree that will be hazardous to humans. So I find myself every time I go to the government nursery place, especially this one in village, those guys have become my friends because they sit and explain to me which trees do not have roots that can crack the foundation of my house or my wall. Because there are some trees that are, I think, have very deep roots. And as a farmer's child as well, I remember my parents farming, they're very particular about there's a tree that you don't plant where you're growing some crops, because that tree ruins those crops. But there's some trees that are friendly to your cash crop. No, not your cash crop. What do you call the other crop? The food crop, the everyday, your maize and beans. There are trees that don't get along with that, and there are trees that do. So I think that's what Dr. Gladys could be alluding to. And maybe that's where sometimes we just have to let go some trees. It could be isolated cases. But I think it's universal that we all know and believe there's a lot of positives in planting trees. We all need trees.
Absolutely, Ms. Kim. And I love the idea of of preventing people from cutting trees needlessly, because I think sometimes we do. We cut trees without reason, but this is where now education, is important. We need to teach people why it's important not to cut trees. And then, to your point, Ms. Kim, and I'm really happy that you're mentioning this, you can actually go and seek guidance from government to say what trees should I not plant, because it'll either get too big or the roots will damage the foundation of the house. I don't know, Sela, would you like to, now that we've explained it a bit better, maybe you can comment?
Yes, thank you, Ms. Kim. That was very, very insightful. Yes, I understand better now. So we're then down to tree choices. A lot of people, I think, if it's in urban spaces, will pick tropical trees. Tropical trees can grow 10 to 15 meters high, very, very high, whereas indigenous trees don't grow that big unless you're by the wetlands of Okavango or Kasani area. So like Ms. Kim was saying, that you do need to do your homework, but I understand that if you have a tree that's damaging right now, then you wouldn't have had the opportunity to have done your research on the choice of tree, because the person who planted it probably planted it way before you got there, or even 15 or 20 years ago. So I take that on board, and I accept that there are issues with some trees, especially with roots, like when you talk about the eucalyptus tree. And there are also some trees that are on the government invader list, which is something that I think the government needs to communicate more. There are a lot of people who planted trees in Gaborone right now that I know that are on the invader list. So thank you, Judith.
Thanks, Ms. Sela. Let's stick with that for a minute. I think, and it keeps going back to, the conversation keeps going back to, the need to educate the public. And I want to ask both you and Ms. Kim, because you've both been involved in programs where you're educating communities, children, etc. What are some of the things that we should be doing to ensure that people understand? What are some of the, and it can be, what is it that you have done in your line of work to ensure that people are receiving the education that they need? Are there any new methodologies that we should probably start considering? How do we get more people involved and eager to learn about some of these challenges and some of the homework that you need to do before you start planting trees or plants, etc.? The fact that government, and I know that there's a lot of information that the government has around the different types of tree species, etc. But how do we get it from there to the general public? It's an open question. Anybody else who has ideas, who can share from their experiences, please join the conversation.
If you don't mind, I can go first. So basically, the fruit trees that we're growing right now, we've done research on them. So, for example, I'll know, like an orange tree, what's the height of an orange tree? A pawpaw, what's the height of a pawpaw tree? And we always encourage training before we do tree planting. But unfortunately, not everybody is pro training because they already have a preconceived idea or that they know about plants. And so when you try to communicate that to them, you get a lot of pushback from people. But when it comes to children, they are full of knowledge, and I've actually been very surprised just how knowledgeable school children are here. They're actually more knowledgeable than adults, I think. And so I think the way forward is just to ensure that everybody that's in primary school, junior secondary, and senior secondary actually have training before and are equipped with the right information. And then the adults, you'd have to deal with it. I'm not sure, you can get advice from Ms. Kim how to deal with that. And then when it comes to government documentation, there's a lot of publications that the government has done. They've done a lot of work. I'm not sure that they've been very effective in communicating what's written to the general public. And I think that there's a disconnect there between us and what the government is actually doing. Thank you, Judith.
Thank you, Ms. Sela. And that's the part that we need to solution for, I guess, is how do we? There's a lot of information, and there are activists involved. So how do we bridge that so that the information that is within government is shared with the public and shared in a way that is understandable? And I agree that starting with children is a very important first step. But I also know, Sela, that you, in the community mobilization work that you do, when you go around, you actually spend a lot of time educating people about the different trees. And as I mentioned earlier, also, how to actually plant the trees, because sometimes we don't plant trees properly, which also causes their should I say demise? They die because we haven't planted them properly, because we don't know any better. Ms. Kim, do you want to speak to education and what we can possibly do to try and bridge that gap between what's already there? The information is there.
Yeah.
We just need to get it out.
Yes. Yeah, yes. And actually, I think we may not be amplifying it from the mountaintop, but there's still some progress happening. Working closely with children and schools, I see a lot of schools, there's always like a section, kids have their own gardens. They do their own gardens, it's part of the agricultural classes. It could still get better. We could amplify it and get it better, make it more critical, more important. I think we also need to understand, as much as there's always that generation gap on how we used to do things and how the modern child is doing things, we have to make this fun. If we can make tree planting, environmental issues, everything that we need to appeal to youth and children, then it has to be fun, it has to be digital, it has to be tech, because that's what appeals to them. So like recently, the kids that we planted with Sela, we planted in I think, Yudit, you were also there when we had an event with the kids and they all planted. So we requested them, we told them every month, you must send us a picture, do a little TikTok video, send me a picture of what your plant is doing, your little tree is doing. Those are things that excite kids. Now, they started like sort of a competition. Everybody wants to see, my tree has grown better than yours. So did you water your tree? Where did you put it? Did you put it in your room and then you forgot about it? Did you put it under the shade? When it was raining, did you take care of it? Did you move it from there? Are you adding some soil? Are you fertilizing? Are you doing all that? So that becomes fun when you have to get them to be involved. Let them lead. Connect it as well to what they're learning in class. So that sort of green curriculum, putting them in apps, fun things. Kids want to do fun things. They'll be more particular, they'll want to do it. Then, of course, making it like sort of an event where we have a launch date or a tree tech lab or a tree planting day, where then we're using a lot of hands-on and innovation, get them to be on the forefront. I really liked what you did last time, where Sela was literally planting with the kids, where of course some of our city kids don't touch soil and they think soil is dirty. But when they get to do it, you're showing them and you're telling them, this is your tree, this is your fruit, this is your vegetable, and you need to plant it. That speaks volumes to them. Then give them like digital badges. We give our kids certificates after every event, so you can come up with like some digital, something that identifies with what they're doing, something that will make them want to be a part of it, feel it, connect with it emotionally, want to talk about it. They want to go bragging about it. So create that environment, even if it's a Facebook page you create for them that they can be posting there on the progress, and that also will get other kids excited about it. We can't ignore the issue of mentorship. And certainly when we're doing projects with youth, like now we're about to launch another project with youth, we involve people across the globe. I will approach Dr. Yodit. Gosh, you have to be a doctor.
I receive it. I receive it, Mr. Finch.
I'll approach Dr. Gladys. Miss Paula has been a big part of our mentorship program. She's actually mentoring our previous cohort of 12 youth, talking to them every day. So can you imagine if we could do the same thing? We get, it can even be like this government tree planting people, then the forestry department, and we link them up. Anytime we invite them to come and talk to our children on anything different, they're usually so keen to help. They're excited. They want to see the other children that want to learn and do what we do. So we can pair them with the older leaders in the community. We can have them get trained. We can take them to those departments, or we can invite those people to schools. And that creates a little bit of a different way of learning. Kids learn by doing. Kids want to emulate other people that they respect. There's wisdom. There's something for them to learn from a different generation that's telling them, let's do it this way. Of course, get them on YouTube, get them on TikTok, get them on some podcasts that they will keep on talking about it. It would make a big difference. So I think we are reaching out to all communities out there. Let's not just talk about it, but let's start it. It doesn't matter how small we can do it, but the most important thing is getting it started. Let's start. We start small. You plant that seed, you'll get a child that you meet 2-3 months later. The child tells you, I actually now have a garden. I started with 1 tree. I've planted 5 others. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Kim. I love the idea of children sending a picture of their tree as it's growing. I think that's, even I'm excited. And maybe it's something that we can, is it possible to do that, to encourage your followers, the listeners here, to plant trees and share photos on LinkedIn and or Instagram, wherever they are, to say, this is my tree, this is my fruit tree that's now budding fruits, these are my pineapples, etc. I think that's a fantastic idea, because you keep it exciting and fun. And I remember that day when poor Sela was trying to explain to the kids how to plant the trees, and they were still, everybody wanted their own tree, and the back and forth there. So there was already excitement that they were holding a tree that they were going to take home to plant. And I think it's something that both of you are able to do so well, where you relate so well with the young ones, with the little ones, and they listen to you as you're explaining to them what it is that they have to do with the trees. I'm excited because some of the things that you're saying for me now is an opportunity for us. If we continue these conversations, it's an opportunity for us to get together and see, how do we plan to ensure that, everybody that's listened to this podcast, but also now to bring this 1 million trees campaign to fruition, so that by the end of this year, we would have planted, I don't know how many trees. Sela, I'm gonna ask you to put that out there, and then let's see how well we do, because I believe that it is possible. Building the right partnerships, and you both already have the right partnerships. It's just maybe bridging some of those relationships that are already there to make it happen a little bit faster. So, Salam, coming right back to you now. I see that we are at 5:15 in the afternoon. We have 15 minutes left in this conversation. I would like to ask you, what is the vision that you have for Botswana? What is it that you'd like to see happening? And how do you think an external audience can support what it is that you're doing here in Botswana? And how do we get this movement going a little bit faster? Sorry for asking so many questions at the same time. I can come back to it. But yeah, what is your vision for Botswana?
Hi, thank you, Judith. So one of my visions is to create a community-driven reforestation project. I think that we started off quite well. We just need to accelerate it a bit more. But obviously, we've had funding challenges with that. But some of the things that I've noticed that are really urgent for us to understand. I can see Miss Paul has been writing amazing things on here. Is that we have to bring AI technology into this tree planting. We have got to bring drones. We've got to bring air pollution monitoring tools, which I don't think the Department of Environment actually have these tools. I know that the Department of Forestry, they don't have things like drones that measure locations and give you all kinds of data that we actually need. So my vision would be that as citizens of Botswana and as residents of Botswana, that people actually understand all of this technology, and they know how to use it, and they know how to read the data and process the data and use it effectively, just so that we can catch up with the rest of the world. And then one of my other visions is that we grow our own food completely, that we're self-sufficient, and then we also grow food for export, like fruit. If you're looking at 1 million trees, I'm sure that we can grow fruits for export, and this is also going to create jobs. So this is my big vision for Botswana. And then the other questions I forgot. You can just repeat them again.
It's fine. One of the other questions that I had asked, now I've even forgotten my own question. Forgive me, because of the things that you've been saying, and I'm getting excited. But I also asked, what is your view on how we accelerate this campaign? And I think you've already spoken to that a little bit. But I don't know, Ms. Kim, is there anything else that I asked that I may have forgotten? I'm excited about.
You were asking how people can get involved.
Yes, that's another question. Yes, thank you.
Yes. So basically, because we're a trust, we're an NGO, so we depend heavily on the donations of people. So how people can actually help is just like sponsor either a hospital or a clinic or a school. So if you're looking at a school, for example, we're looking at 50 to 100 trees per school. If you're looking at a clinic, it's about 10 to 20 trees. If you're looking at a hospital, can be between 100 to 300 or 400 trees. So we need support from in country, from Botswana, but also people from outside, just saying that, you know what, we saw this, we heard this podcast, and we'd like to support. And we'd like to sponsor a school, or we'd like to sponsor a couple of clinics in rural communities. And what we do, actually, we get on a bus. We don't have a car as a trust. We get on a bus with the trees. We actually go there ourselves, and we mobilize the community, like I said, the community, to plant these trees with us. So I think that was it, right, Judith?
Yes, no, that's fine. Thank you, Sela. And I think it shouldn't be that difficult to do. But what I know for sure is we need a few more Selas. We need people like yourself who are willing to, put on your jeans and your sneakers and takis, get on a bus and go to the remote areas, get down on your knees to actually plant the trees whilst you're explaining, and the Sela that walks into a corporate boardroom to explain what the program is all about and how it will benefit everybody. And so this now is a call to those who are online listening from Botswana to reach out to Green Botswana Trust, to say, how is it that you can help to support this very important mandate of planting 1 million trees? One thing that I forgot to ask, or maybe we got sidetracked, is I know that you've partnered with quite a few different entities, but one of the partnerships that excites me greatly, because I believe in the power of children and what they are able to do, is the partnership that you've created with high school students who've come in to volunteer and help with some of the programs that you've been pushing. Do you want to talk to us a little bit about that? And this is in the hope that there are possibly teachers listening who might want to take this back to their schools and see how they can get their students involved.
Thank you, Judith, for bringing this up. So for the last 3 or 4 years, we've had volunteers from Marabula School, from Form 1 to Form 6s. And if I just tell you that these children actually make me want to become a better person, because they are so dedicated, they're always on time, and they work so hard. We've actually gone to plant, our last job was planting a vegetable garden at an orphanage. And we've also gone to plant trees, at 75 trees at a junior school. So they have Monday afternoons off and Saturdays off, and they're always accompanied by 2 of their teachers. So there's about 15 of these students from all different racial backgrounds, from different religious backgrounds, which is a beautiful thing to witness. So they're like the eco warriors. And what we need is actually more Botswana students to actually come forward as a school and just say, you know, we'd like to help. How can we help? Where can we go and plant trees? And they also do their own fundraising. So they'll fundraise and say, actually, we've got a bit of cash here. Where can we go and help? So thank you very much for bringing that up, and really big up to Marabula students themselves for having this initiative.
Thank you, Sela. Yes, I think and I believe sincerely that if this program were to be introduced to the other high schools in Botswana, whether it's Gaborone, Francistown, or further up north, I believe that you will find students who are just as dedicated and committed. And it is our responsibility, therefore, those of us who are keen to see this happening, to make those introductions and to ensure that we highlight the opportunities to come together and contribute to making this real. All of us appreciate the results of all these trees that we're planting. So let's do this. I'm excited. Let me finish reading some of the comments. And Miss Paula, I wish you could join us. I don't know what's happening today, but Miss Paula says the green environment is an integral part of the living library ecosystem that assists in nurturing all life. This is especially necessary inside of the urban environment, excuse me, that is covered in concrete. Trees help hold the soil together as well as prevent rainwater wash off. In addition, it provides shade and clean air. Encapsulate these programs inside environmental science programs for children and teenagers. Absolutely. I'll skip the next one because I think we've talked about that. DIA should develop an app, Ms. Kim, that can assess the environment and identify what trees should be planted in a particular area. And then centralize floral and fauna activities in local areas by using ArcGIS system as part of a larger environmental management system. Core functions of ArcGIS, I guess we can read that, but that's maybe something for us to go and research. And then another suggestion for DIA can partner, that's Destination Imagination, can partner with Environmental Systems Research Institute to get access to ArcGIS, as part of a junior science program to cultivate future environmental scientists and conscious consumers. I love that, conscious consumers. Thank you, Ms. Paula. The Botswana 1 Million Trees campaign using ArcGIS would be a powerful way to plan, track, visualize, and manage the entire life cycle of the tree planting initiative, bringing transparency, accountability, and community engagement to the forefront. I love it. Thank you, Ms. Paula. And then finally, a local NGO such as DIA can get these resources for education ecosystem development purposes. So here we have it. Ms. Paula has solutioned for us. It's now for Ms. Kim and Sela, and I would include myself to have a conversation to see how do we actually make this happen, so that we can not get going. We've started the process. Trees have been planted. We just need to now identify those solutions that will fast track what it is that we're doing. Thank you so much, Ms. Paula. We appreciate all your recommendations. I would like Ms. Kim to comment first, and then I will go to Ms. Sela. Ms. Kim?
Thank you. Thank you very much. This has been quite insightful, and a huge appreciation to our listeners and the comments coming through. Thank you, Ms. Paula. I think there should be part 2, and you should co-host with Ms. Judith and Ms. Sela. You're very fast in this space, and it would be nice for us also to get some best practices, especially coming from you as a farmer who is farming in the tropics. There could be a lot for us to learn. You've actually given me some brilliant ideas. I just can't repeat that word nicely, but something, I think it's a hemp product that I was so excited about the idea of growing it. I'll leave that for part 2. But if you can type it, Ms. Paula, I actually remember you got me researching about it. It was so exciting. And yes, a lot of us growing up in Africa, we were raised by farmers. That doesn't mean that we turned out to be one, but every day we put food on the table because a farmer decided to beat the weather, to do everything possible to go and farm. So this is a call for action for everyone. And this farming will not be done if we don't take care of our environment. And this brings me up, Ms. Judith, to the issue of maybe this we can discuss within our part 2, policymakers, our leaders, our government. How are we ensuring that there's that collaboration? They have a huge role to play, and it's important we see them on the forefront. I so deeply resonate and appreciate the work, Sela, you're doing. And just know it's official. From today, I'd want to volunteer anytime you need to do tree planting. And I can always mobilize some of our students, especially from government schools. Those kids are brilliant, they are innovative, and they want to be involved. They want to be right there doing something. Thank you so much, and have a pleasant Sunday. Somebody is telling me it's time up for me. Cheers and enjoy the Sunday. It was a really nice podcast, and I've appreciated and enjoyed every minute. Loads to learn. Thank you and goodbye. Looks like we lost Miss Judith. Just when I'm passing the mic back to her. Okay, maybe Sela, you can give us some closing remarks. And while at it, please mention how I know you're very, very active, and you've included the policymakers, the powers that be, and the support you're getting, so that we can also advise the masses. We can be able to direct schools on go to this department, go to this ministry. They're supporting these initiatives. Thank you.
Hi, Ms. Kim. Thank you very much. This has been a very insightful podcast. I've learned a lot, especially I've been reading Ms. Paula's comments, and they're very inspiring, especially when it comes to technology and how we can engage the Department of Environment. So my closing remarks would be that I think going forward, we just need to ensure that young people in Botswana and abroad are just very knowledgeable. I mean, it's very important to be knowledgeable. Even if you don't know right now, it's important to make sure that you do actually find out information. It's important to be adaptable in any situation. It's also important to be competitive, especially if it's in your field. And then one of the most important things is to be technical. I can't stress that enough, that the whole world is moving towards technological knowledge. And I just think here, I think that we're being left behind a little bit. And then lastly, because climate change is such a global topic, it's important to have diplomatic skills. I'll just give you an example. In December, we went to Saudi Arabia for COP16 with the United Nations Convention to Combat Deserts. And obviously, when we get there, it's a completely different culture, completely different people. And I just think as Botswana, we need to understand, the spaces that we are arriving to. We just have to understand who else is working in these spaces. And obviously, the studies are doing a great job with transforming the deserts, and we need to be able to communicate, whether you go to Sierra Leone, whether you go to Senegal, whether you go to Dubai or the UK. Diplomacy and technical skills are very, very important for young people moving forward. So thank you, Ms. Kim.
Thank you, Ms. Kim and Ms. Sela. I'm sorry that I missed the last bit of what you were saying, Ms. Kim, and I'm happy that I managed to get back on before Ms. Sela finished her comments. This was a wonderful conversation, and I really appreciate the depth of knowledge that all of you have in this subject, and the passion that you have to ensure that you continue to work with young people and older people. We need to work with everyone to continue to ensure that we leave Earth better than how we found it. I believe it's called stewardship in some instances, but it is so important. And these conversations are equally important because they allow us to build the relationships that we may not see or we have not yet taken time to nurture. So thank you very much, Sela, for being our guest today. Really appreciate you. I hope that you are able to continue working the way you are. Like I said, I'm fascinated by the vision that you have, but just greatly, deeply inspired by how committed you are and, the lengths that you go to ensure that your voice is heard. And today, I hope many more have heard your voice and willing to join this campaign that you have bravely started, and hoping in the next couple of years, it will be an even bigger campaign that's looking towards the rest of this continent and possibly the world. Technology is amazing for me, and I'm still in awe of the fact that podcasts like this can be heard across the globe, touching the minds and hopefully the hearts of people who would like to get involved and start their own campaigns wherever they are. Ms. Kim, we have a tradition of going back to you to end our podcasts, and that's exactly what I want to do today. I know you've already spoken, but I need to hand over to you. Again, back to Sela's point of learning protocol and diplomacy. I would like for you to please close the podcast for us this afternoon. Thank you to all our listeners. I hope that this has been a useful conversation for you and that we will hear back from you, whether it's you sharing a photograph of a tree you've planted or maybe ideas that you may have for other partnerships and collaborations that will help us bring this 1 million tree campaign to life. Ms. Kim.
I love just what you've closed with. So how about one of these days we run a campaign where people share their trees? just send pictures of what you're growing. That would be so nice. I think it's a nice, beautiful way of starting to bring people together as we utilize technology and we involve children in doing that. Thank you so much, Ms. Judith. This has been super great. You're such an amazing person. I really love the way you're so good at connecting dots. You are a community person, community mobilizer, and you constantly looking at sustainability issues, supporting communities, and truly making this world a better place. I see your support for what Sela is doing. I see this going pretty far. And maybe what I'd love, I'm sure there are people who would like to know more about your work, Miss Judith, and about Sela's work. If you could please leave it on the comment section, your details, where they can find you, your websites, your other social media handles, where we all have a space that we are most frequent in that space, in X or if it's LinkedIn. Just get to know that people can connect with you. Sela, people like Ms. Paula, she's very well networked, especially in your space. And I think there's so many other people listening that could be good partners to your project, and especially on sourcing for funding or getting to know who can support this and that project within different communities, different spaces. Our listeners, thank you so much for your patience. I'm so happy I was given the mic back. But we are way past our closing time. This has been a pleasure. And hopefully there will be part 2. Miss Judith will advise us and we'll get back to you. But as always, see you on Sunday, same time, same place. Enjoy the rest of the week. And those in other parts of the world, for us, it's a good evening. And some, they are just going to have a pleasant Sunday. It's still their good morning. Thank you and goodbye.